immigration and Islam. If you clench your cheeks just hearing those words, I understand, I do. This has become one of the most talked about and often the most uncomfortable topics in recent history in the UK. And not for no reason. And with the recent Unite the Kingdom rally, it is quite clear and obvious to see that many Brits have had enough. But exactly what have they had enough of? You ask, well, don't let me tell you, let them tell you exactly what themselves.
Exactly, we need to unite and stand up, and then what specifically do we need to stand up against? Like
illegal immigration, government,
the government.
are absolutely fucking shocking. These people that are coming into our country,
Yeah,
they don't want to mix with us anyway.
exactly, they don't want to.
They don't want to.
So I say we get them all gone then.
Yeah, they all need to be gone.
I'm
They
saying
all need to fuck off.
exactly every single one of them.
Every single fucking one of them. I think Islam should be banned.
I'll actually say, let's call a referendum tomorrow, and anyone who votes for the refugees or asylum seekers to stay here, anyone on the left should have their tax raised to 70% minimum and should free up a space in their house. If they want them here, they can pay for them and make the space for them.
We put the calves, we put them on the plane and send them back from wherever they came from. It's simple as that.
Everyone here, all the whites, mate, you don't see one. Don't see one of them here, yeah?
Take back our country.
That's it, mate. That's all we got to do. We've got to take it back, mate.
Yeah.
None of these people that cross the channel should ever be free to walk the streets of our country. They should be detained and deported.
But you know what's wild is that everyone's talking about how immigrants are, changing Britain and destroying the country, but we haven't really asked who's benefiting from this fear, who's benefiting from this messaging. Because make no mistakes, fear is profitable. Fear wins elections and it fills pockets. And this fear of Islam, the fear of immigration, and the fear of losing your country, it's all part of the same business model. But hey, listen, alright, before you get triggered, I'm not here to point fingers, I'm not here to say that I've got all the answers. All I'm here to do is present my opinion and hopefully start a conversation. Because I want to talk about more than just, fear mongering and these catchy headlines. I want to get into the nitty gritty of the situation because there's a lot to delve into. And I specifically want to talk about how you've been played, because believe me, you have been. So to understand what's happening now, you kind of have to go backwards. And I mean far back. Because we've got to start with how Britain became what it is in the first place. And I mean literally. So let's do it. So the UK didn't rise to power through, pure grit, determination, and good old British will to succeed. That isn't the case. If we're being honest, it was built through a lot of exploitation. Because at a certain point in time, the British Empire literally controlled nearly a quarter of the world's population and land. Places like India, Africa, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and it wasn't trade, it was extraction. Britain took things like gold, cotton, tea, oil, and labour. And in return, Britain gave out flags and violence. So fast forward to today, when people from these countries, the Commonwealth, come here looking for work or for safety, calling them outsiders is a bit mad. Because this empire made them part of the system a long time ago, before they ever even arrived. And for some reason, if you don't believe me, a random black guy in a hoodie about this, I can tell you the facts. Maybe you believe the UCL economists who estimate that the empire extracted around 45 trillion from India alone. Or the fact that at its height around 412 million people lived under British rule. But the thing is, the empire didn't just shape the world, it also shaped how British people see themselves. And that legacy of perceived superiority still bleeds into how people talk about immigration today.
Oh, absolutely outrageous. And how many blacks are there in Leicester? Black people.
And
Oh yeah, as in what?
no,
Oh yeah, that's the favourite immigrant.
Good one.
That's a good one, mate, I like that. Oh yeah, that's the right one. So how...
But here's where it gets a bit tricky, because let's be honest, the average working class Brit didn't really directly benefit from the empire. At least not the way that the elites did anyway. Let's be honest, they were just as exploited. These guys will start working 12-hour shifts in mines or in chimneys while the aristocrats got rich off colonies. So when I hear these white working class families that say, my family, my heritage built this country, technically they did, but they didn't own it. And that sentiment still carries on today. Because let's be honest, if we fast forward to today, the average working class white person is still being screwed. Especially if you don't live in a major town or city that's funded by the government. You end up with low wages, rent that's through the roof, the NHS collapsing on your head, But the question is, who gets blamed for all of that? Because it's not the billionaires, it's not our corrupt politicians, it's immigrants. A bit strange, don't you think? It's very strange actually, because it's these same immigrants that are putting a strain on the NHS that are actually the NHS. And again, if you don't believe me, here are the facts. Around 40% of NHS doctors were born outside of the UK. These are people that are responsible for saving the lives of the average Brit. And most of them aren't British. So what's really going on here isn't some sort of like cultural decay. It's more like a political distraction. And this distraction comes in many familiar forms. Some would even say faces and names. And this distraction that you're being sold has a very familiar pan to it and is often served to you by very familiar faces. Faces like these. Notice any patterns? Before we go any deeper into actually naming and shaming these individuals that are leading this fear-mongering, let's actually talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Unite the Kingdom rally, because that was pretty crazy. Let's talk about it. So on September the 13th, as you probably know, London saw one of its biggest ever anti-immigration marches in modern history. And as you know, that was the Unite the Kingdom rally, which was organised by a very polarising individual, Tommy Robinson, which drew a reported 100,000 people into the streets of London. They carried Union Jacks and St. George's crosses, chanted slogans like, "Send them home, send them home." Brandishing signs targeting migrants and Islam. And let's be honest, as the smoke kind of clears on it now, it is quite clear that there isn't really one narrative for this rally. It's split between people saying it's just a bunch of racists screaming and shouting nonsense in the road, to others saying that it was a signal for change and a signal that the UK is able to, really galvanize behind a message. With our very own Prime Minister, the great Keir Starmer, calling it plastic patriotism, which apparently sent shivers down his lizard spine. And people like Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, adding fuel to the fire, claiming that if Brits didn't fight back, they would die.
You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
I don't know about you, but that felt very suspicious from him. On a side note, he's built very weird. I think someone said he looks like he's got a JBL speaker in his chest.
This is Elon Musk.
I'll let you decide what he's hiding in that chest. And although I don't really feel too strongly about the protest itself, I think for a lot of people it was an excuse to get out of the house and hang out with their racist friends.
In the place. All of them.
MPs and Muslims.
They're all of them, every one.
I don't want them in here.
Oh, they're...
All with the beers and going on and all that shit. And they're all fucking screaming.
Who are they?
Yeah, mate.
I'm sure for others it was something that felt like it was very powerful, so I don't feel like it was either or. I think it's obviously a mixture of the two. I do believe that it was used, or it was probably, it was used by opportunists to kind of push more racist agendas. There was people telling, immigrants that they should get out of the country. There was people talking about how they wish they could stand on the beaches with guns and kill immigrants trying to get over boats.
When you pay someone to shoot them all on the beach,
oh, wow.
But you don't get rid of the bodies,
yeah.
You just keep shooting them after a couple of weeks. Yeah. Hundreds of them, take a picture, send it back home, and they'll think twice about coming back.
Very strange people were there, for sure. And while that crowd, marched under flags, the messages that they carried were already being whispered in supermarkets, pubs, and news comment sections for years now. Because let's be honest, the UK is run by fear. And these are some of the faces of that fear. If we're talking about white working class fear, there's nowhere better to start than Mr. Nigel Farage. The man who built an entire career off this script of fear, selling fear to poor working class white people, convincing them that immigrants are the issue and the reason that they're struggling.
I think we can argue very strongly that on an individual basis, mass migration has made the average Briton poorer. None of these people that cross the Channel should ever be free to walk the streets of our country. They should be detained and deported.
And millionaires like Tommy Robinson are also doing the same, role-playing as this working class, regular bloke, but really someone who's built a brand from hatred. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. These two men and men like them do not represent the working class. They don't. But what they do is they exploit the working class. They sell you fear while they cash checks. And just to put this into perspective for you, the UK's top 1% earns more than the bottom 70% combined. Yet the working class anger isn't targeted at these rich 1%ers, it's targeted at the 0.5% of the population, which are asylum seekers. Seems a bit strange, doesn't it? And let's be honest, man, the system loves this. The system loves that the UK and the British public are so easy to manipulate. Because as long as the poor working class people are busy fighting each other, the rich don't have to answer for anything. And the truth is, if fear is the product, then Islamophobia is the marketing strategy, and it always has been. And you are the method. So let's briefly touch on Islamophobia and its rise in the UK recently. So as you might be able to tell, I am not Muslim. But due to having empathy and having friends who are Muslim, I can tell being Muslim in the UK right now is exhausting. Because you're basically constantly having to prove that you're one of the good ones. That you're not a terrorist, that you're not a rapist. You're not some sort of crazy guy that's in a Muslim sex ring or something, targeting white women. That isn't what you're doing. You're just a Muslim guy who works a job. Meanwhile, people can openly talk about wanting to eradicate you and your kind, and it's just seen as a bit of a edgy opinion rather than what it is, hatred and xenophobia. And the elephant in the room is that the British public don't feel comfortable with Muslim people, and I don't think they really ever have. The UK likes to have this facade of tolerance. You'd often hear British people being proud of how tolerant they are, when I feel like tolerant is really an interesting choice of words. What does it mean to tolerate something? It kind of means that you allow it to exist. You kind of bear it. Like you look at it, you're like,
fine, I guess.
Is that really the type of energy that you want? I don't think so, but I think it's a very good example of the British spirit, which is like, you can really dislike something, but as long as in public you tolerate it, then it's all good. And I think what's happening right now is the mask is slipping. People feel more comfortable. And not just comfortable, they almost feel enthusiastic to openly hate Islam. And I'll be honest, as someone who does have some Muslim friends, I have asked them questions about their religion because I'm curious. I'm a curious person. And there's certain things I've read or some parts of the Quran that I've seen that I find questionable. And I think like having that conversation is an interesting one where you actually question parts of their religion, not just kind of vilify the whole thing. I feel like there's definitely parts of most religions that are very questionable. If you look at parts of the Old Testament, there's going to be things that they say there that are going to be like, I don't think this really fits with our British values. However, that isn't really questioned because, let's be honest, again, religion is a proxy for race. It is. When British people say they want Muslims out of the country, they're not talking about like, oh, Joseph down the road who reverted to Islam. They're talking about black and brown people who are Muslim. They want you out of the country. But let's be honest, like Islamophobia isn't just about prejudice. It's profitable. Extremely, because it fuels political campaigns, it drives media ratings, and it distracts people from the real issues like poverty and corruption. And at the heart of this fear that a lot of British people have, there's one idea that politicians love to manipulate, and it's the idea that British people are being replaced. So let's talk about that. So let's talk about the white British fear of being replaced. So this is something that people are often afraid to say out loud, and that is exactly why I want to talk about it. White British people have a deep, deep fear of being replaced. They have a deep, deep fear that we as, non-white people wish to take revenge on them for what their ancestors did. And it's obvious to see. It's really obvious to see. I think that is why white British people have really been uncomfortable with change. They want to keep the status quo. And I think that's why we're seeing a rise in Christianity. We're seeing a rise of more conservative values because these mirror the, basically traditionally white values, the traditional British values. And things that don't adhere to this are seen as a threat, when really they might just be a sign of evolution, a sign of change. Because a lot of white British people honestly feel like they're being pushed out of their own country. And the thing is, mocking that fear doesn't solve anything, because we have to actually try to understand it. Whether we like it or not, they are the majority, and their opinions are extremely weighty. They carry weight. And the thing is, a lot of this fear that white Brits have is this fear that it's not really new. It's kind of rooted in insecurity, in a loss of identity. Like, let's be honest, the UK isn't what it used to be. There's no longer this kind of like monolithic, homogenous society where everyone looks the same, everyone's got similar backgrounds, everyone knows each other's parents and siblings, and there's like little community parties on the road. That isn't happening as much anymore. And I'd be disingenuous to say that multiculturalism isn't a part of that. When you have people that believe in different things in a close proximity to each other, sometimes that leads to conflict. Sometimes that leads to a kind of fear of the unknown and a fear of, change and a fear of difference. To ignore that and pretend that isn't happening is disingenuous in my opinion. But the one question I have when it comes to this fear of being replaced and this fear of becoming a minority in the UK is, why are you afraid of becoming a minority? How are minorities treated? And why do you fear becoming one? If minorities, have the same power and the same rights as the majority, then what's wrong with becoming a minority? It's probably because you're fully aware that minorities aren't treated the same as the majority. And you're probably fully aware that there will be changes in the way that you are treated and your status in society if you are no longer the majority. And I think that is what really, what they're really afraid of, that they're going to lose their privilege. They're going to lose their ability to have control. And as we know, the history of Britain in general is one of conquest, one of power, one of taking control, one of, taking over places, literally inserting and asserting dominance onto others. And they're no longer that power anymore. Or at least there's the threat of that power being taken. But I'm sure you see the irony in this. The same Britain that once colonized almost half the planet is now terrified of change. But the truth is, most immigrants aren't here to replace anyone. Most of them are here to survive. Most of them are here to live a better life than where they were from, usually due to the secondary effects of what Britain did to their country. And a lot of them are doing the jobs you don't want to do. They're cleaning hospitals, they're building infrastructure, they're starting small businesses. They're not all here just to kill and destroy. They're merely filling the gaps that the system has created. If you don't believe me, then argue with the facts. The Oxford Migration Observatory in 2024 stated that around 75% of UK immigration is for work or study, not for asylum. Maybe this fear of being replaced is more of an example of psychological conditioning rather than an actual fear of a possibility. Maybe it's just the fact that you're aware that maybe there is karma coming. Maybe not you directly, but you as a nation, Britain, have kind of called this onto yourselves. Because I don't think this fear is about race. I think it's more about control. And with Britain, it's always been about control. Because I do believe if people actually woke up and realized who's robbing them, they would stop blaming their neighbors. They stop blaming the Asian guy that runs the supermarket down the road, and they'll start looking up into those big shiny buildings full of people that you never see, that you never meet. Maybe they know more than you believe they do. Because it's those people in their shiny suits and briefcases that, benefit from the division in this country. Because it keeps our focus off of the corruption, off all the nonsense and the stuff going on in the background, off equality and off the failing systems. Because it is way easier to just blame it all and say, the problem in the UK is just immigrants, it's migrants, it's asylum seekers. It's a lot easier to say that than to admit that, let's be honest, this country is failing on so many parts. They sold off housing. Housing is no longer something that is affordable for the average person. They've gutted the healthcare system, and they've got away with underfunding education for decades now. Because the truth is, capitalism thrives off competition, even between those who should be allies. And the white working class have a lot more in common with immigrants than they think. And it's mainly because both are being used as pawns to push an agenda. And I really want to get this through your head if you're watching this and you have had these thoughts about immigrants being a problem or immigrants being your enemy. Immigrants are not your enemy. The top 1% is your enemy. You and these immigrants, you're both fighting for the same scraps. The scraps that are being thrown by the 1%. Instead of fighting for scraps with Abdul, look up and see who's throwing you these scraps and demand more from them, because there's a lot more at that table. And the truth is, until we face that, until we face the hard truth that we are being manipulated, there's no flag, there's no slogan, there's no culture war that is going to save this country. Okay, listen, we have to stop pretending that this is something to do with Britishness, that this is a war on Britishness. It's not. Because being British isn't about your skin colour, it's not about your religion. It's more about your contribution to society and your integrity as a person. Because the real Britain that I know is multicultural. It's flawed, it's loud, and it's beautiful, and it has a lot of potential. And that Britain that I envision, it's not only for white people. It's for anyone who's willing to pull their weight and contribute. And the only way this idealistic future can ever come to fruition is if we stop allowing fear to dictate who belongs. So the question isn't, are immigrants ruining Britain? The real question is, who is selling you that story and why are you still buying it? Because fear made this country powerful once, but I think truth can really set it free. Peace.